Hello and welcome to SLP Full Disclosure. I am your host, Jennifer Martin, and joining me is my sidekick, Jonathan Carey.
Hey, how's it going?
Actually, Jonathan, I'm glad that you asked because it's going so well and we have some exciting news to share.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to finally tell the world about all this.
It's time. You're going to be able to sleep again. I know it's been crushing to hold this secret in, but now it's time. So,
yes.
the news is that Jonathan and his team have worked so hard and have done an incredible job rebranding the podcast. And for those of you who did not know what that or do not know what that means, just as I didn't know in the beginning, we have some new cover art for the podcast and some new, is it appropriate to say fresh beats, Jonathan?
Yes, the beats are very fresh. I will say theme music, but we can also say fresh beats.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep up. I always have to run these, lingo by you to make sure, is this something still, can I say,
I think that's
can I
what
say
the
I'm
kids
shook?
are saying.
Can I say I'm shook?
No, I think we
Okay.
should stop.
Please don't. Okay. So in addition to that, those two things, we also have new Instagram and YouTube.
Yeah, and so on Instagram, you can now find us at SLP Full Disclosure, and on YouTube, we are at youtube.com/SLP Full Disclosure. And we think these will be two really great places for us to be able to connect better with our audience, because we're hoping to do some new exciting episodes like mailbag episodes and just a lot of different stuff where we can engage with you all a lot more than we have in the past. And then additionally, we'll be posting some episode highlights onto YouTube, and we'll be doing the same on Instagram too.
Yeah, I always think it's so fun to be able to see the people because, in your head, you think you know what people look like, and then you see them and you're like, oh, that's not at all what I had thought. But so I think it's fun to be able to have a couple different mediums. And, like Jonathan said, part of the fun of doing this podcast is connecting with you all and getting to talk to really cool people. And so we definitely want you to interact and be part of this community. So please go check that out and give us ideas. What types of episodes do you want? What questions do you have? And we'll be putting out some different calls to action for you all as we make more plans. But super excited and nice job to Jonathan and your team and the team. You did a great job.
Well, thank you. We think it turned out great. And speaking of seeing faces, if you are more of a fan of a video podcast versus only listen to the audio, you can see the video now on YouTube. So that's exciting too. So you can see every time Jennifer takes a sip of her water.
And Jonathan, can I say that I'm a YouTuber now officially? Is that?
I think we're a little in the early days of that, but maybe one day you'll earn the title of YouTuber.
All right, I got to have some cred with my kids, so I'm gonna go ahead and start saying that, even if it's not true. So, but today we're gonna jump into the episode, and we're recording this on Monday, and didn't I teach you, Jonathan, Friday? You had not heard of that, had you?
That might have been a new one for me for good reason.
Happy Friday. Well, now, normally sometimes Monday is a fun day, but not always. But today is Monday Fun Day because of who I get to speak with. And they're just two of my favorite people. I feel like it's rare when you meet people that you just respect so much personally and professionally. It's kind of probably the way you feel about me, Jonathan, but
no comment.
So I'm sure you can completely relate, but these are two people that have been part of my life for a long time. And we figured it was a good time to start talking to those of you who are going to be getting out into the professional world soon, starting your clinical fellowship, and just reflecting back on what do we wish that we would have known when we were starting, because there was a lot of things that I wish I would have known. And so I wish that I had somebody, I wish podcasts were invented then so that some podcaster would have been able to teach me, but didn't happen. So just trying to impart some of that wisdom on what do we wish we knew when we were starting our clinical fellowship. And my guests today are Allison Larson and Iris Snow. And their names may be familiar to you because they have both done another episode with us previously, episode 20 and episode 4. And they're just both really incredible SLPs. And let me tell you a little bit about them before we get started. So Allison Larson is an SLP. She's worked in public schools, private clinics, a skilled nursing facility. But her passion is working with adolescents and young adults and helping them to transition to the workforce and adult life. She has worked in a high school setting for 15 years and a post-secondary setting for 6 years. And her goal is to work on real-world skills, and she always strives to push her students to be independent and productive citizens with a good quality of life. And then we have Iris Snow, and Iris is a bilingual SLP, and she's worked in acute care, a children's hospital, a level 1 trauma hospital, early intervention, and currently she works at a world-renowned rehabilitation hospital that specializes in traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injuries. So I am thrilled to speak with Allison and Iris, and we're going to get started. All right, as promised, I am here with two of my favorite humans in this whole world, Allison Larson and Iris Snow. And I also realized something. You're the only guest that have come back for a second time.
Two-peat?
A two-peat, I know. So I was like, when I bully you enough to say yes, it worked.
It did.
It did take a lot of bribes, but I'm happy to be here.
Yes, me too.
Yes. So if you definitely go back, and I think Allison is episode 20 and Iris is episode 4, if you want to know a little bit more in detail about the two of them. They were very gracious to come on before and talk about their professional life. So, so I'm just so happy that you said yes again.
And I won't tell your family that you said we were your two favorite people.
Yes. Oh, they know. It's no secret. They know that when the kids say who's my favorite, they know the answer's the dog, and that you guys are my favorite humans. So it all works out. So one of the things that I thought would be really fun, and I think would have been really helpful when back in the dark ages when we were getting out of grad school, is to think about what do we wish that we would have known when we were starting our clinical fellowship. And I know there's about to be a lot of people that are starting their clinical fellowship. And I mean, who better to impart this wisdom on them than the three of us? Right?
Yeah.
If you say so.
Right.
Or what not to do. So I think there's...
Okay.
And so just to give everybody, we all did go to grad school together. And it was interesting because I kind of was I took a bit of a, what would you call it? A gap semester. And so Iris was in the cohort above me. Mm-hmm. So I was part of the time in Iris's cohort and part of the time in Allison's cohort. So I bridged those two, which was great because I got to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't have otherwise. But so we were all in the trenches together, and then kind of went out and did our clinical fellowship a little bit of a stagger, right? Or Allison, did we do ours at the same time? No, we staggered a little bit.
Yeah, I did mine.
You don't remember, do you?
I did mine in Gurnee, Illinois.
Oh, oh, that's right. Okay, it's all coming back to me now.
At a school.
Okay,
so I was in a K-5 building in
That's
Gurnee,
right.
Illinois.
That's right. Okay, so we did a stagger because when we were in Oregon together, you were doing your internship.
Yes.
Okay.
In a medical setting. Yep.
Okay. And then Iris, you were before both of us.
I think so. It's a long time ago. I can't remember. But I think because I was at the hospital. So I think I did my last rotation there and then did my clinical fellowship year there as well. Yeah.
Okay. So Allison, you were at a school. Iris, you were in a hospital. And then I did my clinical fellowship in a hospital. So, all right. So we have not talked about this beforehand. So we're going to go around and say, what is something that we wish that we would have known? And again, hopefully it'll help. So who wants to go first?
Well, I think that's the perfect segue to kind of my first thing that I wish I would have known is thinking about how Iris was in the medical field. I was in the school setting, and Jenny, you started in the medical field, but then you switched to the school setting later. And so when I was going through grad school, I knew that I always wanted to work in the school systems. And so I never really took the opportunity to do much else as far as the medical setting or even a clinical setting. So I wish I would have, before my clinical fellowship year and maybe during, was take advantage of more settings, working in a variety of settings. Because I knew I always wanted to work in the schools, but when I started in the schools, I realized before I had kids, all the opportunities there are out there to make extra money after school hours and on the weekends in different settings, in different facilities, like the skilled nursing facilities, working as a PRN in the hospitals. So I did those things, but I really lacked any basic understanding of how those systems work because I never really had any experience except for what we had to have, right, in grad school, but I didn't have any experience on top of that. So do you guys feel the same way?
I do too. But mine was the opposite. I felt like we did get some school-based experiences in school or with kids, but later on in my career, started with the medical setting and then switched over to do early intervention. I felt that, I was starting all over again. So I wish that I would have taken that time to try something a little bit different and not just focus on medical, to be able to be a better therapist, because it took a while to kind of catch up to speed. So I wish I would have taken advantage of other opportunities in other settings.
I think you're exactly right. And I try to tell this to new grads all the time that this is the time you might think I know exactly what I want to do. I mean, that was my thought. I was like, I know I want to work with adults. I want to do medical. But if you don't try other things, maybe you don't know what you want to do or what you don't want to do. So, and I think I think part of that is this fear of, if I don't start with exactly what I'm going to do for the rest of my career, then I'll never get into it. But I think you're right, Allison, that if you start and try a little bit of everything, then you can continue to do a little bit of everything through your career. It's just so much harder later to switch.
Yeah.
And I think too, we were also focused in grad school, kind of checking all the boxes of the requirements, that I only focused on what I had to do. And I guess looking back, while, I was single with no kids, I should have invested even some more of my personal time doing job shadows or getting myself in different settings, because you just have more time at that point in your life to absorb all that knowledge and experiences that, I didn't, because I was too busy going to concerts and having fun, which is important too.
It is.
A good work-life balance, yes.
We want to take a quick break from this episode to talk to all of you recently graduated SLPs about the amazing clinical fellowship program at Med Travelers. Med Travelers offers clinical support and top-tier supervision that allows you to start your travel career while completing your clinical fellowship and earning your Cs. Are you interested in learning more about the excellent benefits and guidance featured in the Med Travelers Clinical Fellowship Program? Then visit medtravelers.com/clinical fellowship to learn all the details about the program. That's medtravelers.com/clinical fellowship. And now back to the show.
I let my fear take over of the medical setting. I know that it always intimidated me and I was a little fearful. And so I kind of stayed away. But now as an adult, I think, you learn that you have to conquer your fears, and a little bit of fear is normal, but you're never going to get over that unless you do it. So all of you out there right now, if you're intimidated or scared by a situation, you're never going to get over it unless you just put yourself out there.
Well, and I think that goes along with like the imposter syndrome and this, where we feel like, and I see this a lot, and I don't remember feeling this way, this like, I gotta be perfect or I'm not gonna do it. I think I just went through, when I think about how clueless I was for some of these things, like, oh yeah, sure, I'll try that. Yeah, what could go wrong? But I think there's this thought, well, if I'm not perfect, I shouldn't even start it or do it. But it's like, no, that's not how it works. You have to start, you'll never be perfect. That doesn't exist. But you have to start, not be great, not know everything, but that's how you learn it. So yeah,
Absolutely.
It's rampant.
It is. But I think it's also important that you are aware that you don't know everything. I want you to be confident, but at the same time, you also need to realize too, that it's okay to say, I don't know, but I will find out. Super important. You don't want to make sure you don't get way over your head, but it's okay. You don't need to know everything. Take that time to ask questions and then go home that night, do some research, and then come back the next time and be more prepared.
No, the reality of it was, Iris, I would say, I don't know, let me find out. I'd frantically call one of you all and say, what do I do? And then I'd come back the next day and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me. But
how many
either
phone
way.
calls did we have that started with, I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing? I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
All the time.
No. So just remember that.
Yeah.
Whatever you're feeling, everybody else is also feeling too. They just may be doing a better job of faking it.
Yeah.
What about you, Iris? What's one you have?
I think that it's important too that when we started, I was so excited to start my clinical fellowship year and so nervous about doing the interview process. But at the same time, I think thinking back is I wish that I was also interviewing them. Taking the time to see if this is really going to be, first of all, what I want to do, and is this going to help me develop into the clinician that I want to be? And with that being said, is making sure that are we going to have the supervision? Am I going to have the supervision that I need in order to have someone there by my side to help me if I do get stuck or I have some, or I become clueless on what to do. So I think that is something I wish I would have gone back and taken more time with that and making sure that it was the right place for me.
I absolutely have that as one of mine too, Iris, because I realized that I had no plan. I did not even, I think I felt so just like, oh, I'm so happy that I got this position that I never thought to even ask, like, well, what is supervision going to look like? How am I going to, how often are we going to meet? How would I get a hold of you? And so because of that, we hardly ever met. I couldn't get a hold of him. I mean, it was not a good situation. And I didn't even think, just like you, I like the way you put that I should have also been interviewing him, my supervisor, or the facility. Like, what is this going to look like? And let's have a plan beforehand. And it's so much harder to come up with a plan in the middle of it when you're panicking and not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And seeing if your supervisor isn't going to be there at all times, is there anyone else that they can connect you with that's actually in person, another speech pathologist or another teammate that you can then go to? Because as SLPs, we know that we're often the only SLP either in the building or on site. So a lot of times there's not someone right there at the ready for you to go to. So that's something, even if your supervisor is not right there at all times, making sure that there's someone.
Yeah. And with that too, I think you brought up a good point, is making sure that even if it's not your supervisor, it's someone else, but even, looking into other disciplines as well. They could be a great source or great resource for teaching you. And that was something that in hindsight, I think back that I wish I would have taken advantage of those relationships of, PT, or physical therapy, occupational therapy, respiratory therapy, and how much they can also help at the time to teach me new skills that would have helped me make things a little bit easier with my patients. So being open to that.
Always make time for eating lunch with your coworkers. I know that it's a little nerve-wracking when you're just starting out and you feel like you have so much to do and maybe you can't take a break, for lunch or, to get down to the lunchroom. But that's really where those other relationships with your coworkers are going to be formed. And where you're going to feel like you can trust maybe your coworkers to ask those silly questions that, we all need to ask in different settings.
Absolutely.
And I didn't have this as one of mine, but hearing you say that, Allison, I think that is I think that's also something to remind people that are just starting out is, I remember I was talking to this therapist and she's like, well, I'm taking work home every night. I'm taking work home every weekend. And it's like, well, why? And she said, well, everybody is, we're all working late. And that thought of, you teach people what the expectations are going to be. And so if you're willing to go work all night and spend your weekends working, then that becomes the expectations in some ways. And so to take that time to have lunch, you're allowed to have a meal, even if you feel like there's no way. You have to take care of yourself and do those things and kind of set those boundaries, because I think that is one of the number one reasons that people get really burned out in this field or other similar fields, is they just don't take that time. It seems small, but it adds up eventually to just lead to burnout.
Yeah. And Jenny, with that too, I'm just thinking about working in the medical setting. Sometimes that is difficult to do, because if you are working with someone, during meals or swallowing, that's when you're going to see those patients. But even if you're not meeting during that meal, make that time later on, 5-minute, 10-minute break later on, if you can, to try to get that me time and to regroup again.
Would it be awkward to eat with them?
One for you, not for me. One for you, one for me.
Not the best to do in the hospital setting, but
you know what I used to get into all the time when I was in the hospital, speaking of, are the Lorna Doones. I was like obsessed with those shortbread cookies. So I was one for you, one for me. No, I'm modeling how I want you to do this. This is why I'm eating multiple packs of these. So even if that's when you have to eat lunch, that's what you do.
But that point brings us to advocating for yourself. And, you're not only learning how to do the job, but you do have to learn how to advocate for yourself, because that's a lifelong skill. And I think as a CF, we're often just, whatever you say, we don't know anything. And you have to learn to find your voice and make sure that you can advocate for yourself.
I actually have that as one of mine too. So I figured, I was like, somebody else is going to have this too. But it's so important. And I agree with you that I used to think of it as almost a sign of weakness. But now it really is a sign of professional maturity to say, hey, this is, and I wish I would have gone back to working with the supervisor. I wish that I would have said and felt like I could go to them and say, hey, this is what I need to help me be successful. What can we do about that? Instead of, like you said, feeling like I'm not worthy. I'm just going to take it because I'm just so relieved to be here. But in the end, it did hurt that experience and what I could have gained from it if I would have just, and I always say, you can do it very professionally and kindly. It doesn't have to be an aggressive, move.
I will not do that this weekend.
I will not stand for it. Now, give me another Lorna Doone cookie. You can definitely be very professional about it, but it can make or break your experience at your job.
Yeah, no, and I think you're absolutely right. You have to become your own advocate. It might be hard at first, but it's something that you're going to have to do the rest of your career. So might as well start, from the beginning. But definitely, I would advocate to have that good mentorship, or tell them what you need in order to be, to take advantage of that time that you have to learn while you're there. So, and also with other disciplines. Yeah.
If I know there's a lot of professional development opportunities for having courageous conversations and things. And I think as a grad student or a CF, I think I would definitely recommend going through those courses, because you're not only going to need it for your own professional development, but for also working with families and patients. And, you have to kind of get over the hump of those awkward conversations, because we all know you're definitely going to have many hard conversations in this field.
Yes. Or even motivational interviewing, I think, is the other one that I wish I would have known earlier in my career as well. I think that way too, to try to get clients or patients to be more involved in therapy and trying to see how the best way to to speak to them, to be able to buy into therapy, if you may.
I have not heard that term, Iris.
Oh, motivational interviewing. It's great. It's a great source.
Interviewing.
Yes. And it's just kind of turning, making a spin on the way that you're presenting things, making it more positive to the patient. So then they're really more of the ones coming up with the goals and wanting to be more engaged in therapy versus you telling them exactly what they're going to do. So something I wish I would have learned a lot earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because I think human nature is that if we feel like we're being told to do something versus if we think, oh no, I made that decision and I came up with it. So it's almost like I'm thinking of this with my own teenager that, you can't, I'm thinking, oh, how can I incorporate this into my family life? Because it's like, if you tell them this is what you're going to do, you're going to get less buy-in. If you say, well, let's talk through what are some things you think, how could this work? And then it's like, no, I came up with that.
Yeah,
so
it's your idea.
I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So one of the things that I had, speaking, it made me think of it too with your talking about going to concerts, Allison, is creating a budget and sticking to it. Because I remember getting out and it's like your first job and it's like, oh, I'm getting a paycheck. But it's like at the same time, you may be having to start paying off student loans and having, real world expenses. So I wish that I would have done a better job of having a budget from the beginning. And I'm telling you, anyone listening, people used to tell me this too, and I didn't listen to them. So I maybe nobody else is going to listen to it either, but even though you do not, it is going to feel so far away, start saving for retirement. It's your very first job.
Yes.
No matter how, if whatever that looks like, even if it's a small amount, I promise you will not regret it.
Yes. And that is something I wish that someone would have said to me as well. It was never brought up. And, now I kick myself to think of how much more, in a better place you might be, when you think about retirement, if I had not wasted those first couple years. So even if it was just a couple bucks here, just a couple bucks every paycheck, it would have made a huge difference. So please, get yourself educated on that and start putting things away.
I will never forget. I was traveling, going all sorts of places, having so much fun, calling home, and my dad would just say, "You're living the life. Just remember, this is going to come to an end at some point. You need to start saving." I'm like, no.
That's another day. Yeah. Well, that reminds me of when I would, in grad school, living off, I had a job, but then even though I had a job making decent money, I still was like, well, I might as well just take out the full amount of this loan. I mean, come on, I'm going to be making so much money.
You and I both.
And I remember the same kind of jokes on me.
Guilty as charged.
I remember calling my mom and having that similar conversation where it's like, I just bought a new bike. We're going to Las Vegas. And I remember her saying, that money's not yours. You have to pay that back. I was like, gotta go. Okay, we're losing our connection. Bye. And yeah, it was
a lot of trips were funded with financial aid and a lot of great trips, but we should have saved.
Yes, I remember my husband saying many times, I'm so glad I get to help pay for your good time.
My husband says the same thing.
But it made us who we are. And so therefore,
no regrets. Yeah.
And they like who we are. So you're welcome.
Right.
But I think, so my next one kind of feeds right into that. And that's, I wish I would have understood the pay structure of the different jobs or settings before, I kind of picked one. Because again, back to, when you start off, you're just happy to get any job. Mm-hmm. And you don't necessarily, look down the road for the future. And at any job or any setting, you can call HR, right? And see what the opportunities are to, get moved up, or what are the opportunities to get a promotion and, get more money. And I know that starting out, I never thought of that or looked into that at all. Mm-hmm. So in the schools, as you know, at least in Michigan, if you switch school systems, they basically start you, from the bottom. And some school districts may give you 1 to up to 3 years to start your salary. But I wish I would have known that going in, because I feel like I'm kind of stuck in the school system I am now because I have so many years of service in, where I know, Iris, you can maybe speak to the hospital setting. It's not necessarily that same way.
No, and excuse me. No, I think that, I think it's still a really good idea to call HR and find out what other opportunities there are at other facilities and kind of get an idea what that facility might be paying versus yours. But it's still, really important to be able to pursue those questions. And in the hospitals, my experience has been when I've been able to go from one facility to another, there usually isn't too much of a difference, so I wouldn't have to start all over again. But it also depends on the facility. If it's a facility that more people that is attracting more of the employees, that they're, more people are applying to that type of job, then yeah, you do have a little bit more competition, and you might have to take a little pay cut. Or if you're going from state, that is something that I experienced. Coming from Arizona to Colorado, I had to take a pay cut, but also it was the quality of life. I was looking for something a little bit different. So knowing that that's something that you might have to sometimes, take that pay cut, but you have to look at the whole picture.
Well, and I think something I remember having this conversation with you, Iris, it's been a while, but when you were going to work at a hospital here and advocating for just what skills you bring to a job. And I know it's harder sometimes with a school, although I don't know, maybe there is some wiggle room with saying, could I get another year added? I don't know if there's any wiggle room there, but even with the hospitals, if you say, like, Iris, you're bilingual, so, okay, that's worth something. That's worth a lot. So I feel like we had that conversation where you were saying, oh no, you were talking with somebody that didn't realize you could negotiate.
Absolutely.
You're like, no, you can negotiate.
Yes. And that's something I wish that we would have gotten some sort of class or a seminar in school about that you need to assess the value that you're bringing to that company. And if you have these extra skills to be able to ask for money for those skills. I mean, the worst thing they're going to say is no, but there is, I think it's a negotiation that has to happen. And a lot of, I think speech therapists, when we're new, we don't realize that we can negotiate, not too much, but a little bit, to be able to get paid for those extra skills. So I think, that's something that I do wish that we would have gotten a little bit more guidance on. But I think it's also important to have, friends that you can call, and maybe you don't, you're not saying the details or specifics of the payment, but at least let them know, hey, did you discuss it? How did it go? What conversations did you have, to be able to have this discussion with that future employer?
I would have loved to take a business class or something that kind of prepared you for the business world or the business side of being a speech pathologist. I think that's definitely something that is left out of our program, but yet so many of those skills and principles, end up being in our field if you want to open your own clinic or, like you said, negotiating, all of those things.
Yeah. And I think it stems, I'm glad it's changing, but I always felt like, this has been a very female dominated field. And so is some of those things where I think to myself, I think sometimes we feel like as females, and again, I think some of this is changing and I'm so happy, but that, oh, well, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to have these uncomfortable conversations, even though we're ultimately hurting ourselves. And that, they say that if you start out lower, like how much do you lose over the course of a career? Because then you're not getting the raises or what you're worth. And I think that's what it stems from or what it goes back to is just, if you don't ask, you don't know. And it's okay to have those conversations, and it's not being pushy. It's just, again, goes back to that advocating for yourself and what you're worth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any others? Anything else that we can't live without explaining our knowledge, our wisdom, imparting to somebody?
I think the one thing I really want to touch on is just cultivating those relationships. I think relationships with other speech therapists, relationships with mentors, I think that that is something that has really carried me throughout my entire career. I can't tell you how many times I have called, peers. Jenny, how many times I've called you to say, I need guidance, I need help. What do you think? What are your thoughts? And how much that information was so invaluable. I think that that is something that I'm glad that I was able to do, from early, from the beginning of my career. And I just highly encourage everyone to keep those relationships, take that time to develop and nurture those relationships, because they're going to help you throughout your career. So that's my big lesson, I think, that I've kind of have learned, and I wish I would have taken more time with. And although I think I have really good relationships, but I wish that I would have nurtured some other ones.
Well, and I think we had and I don't know, I'm sure every cohort has their pros and cons and whatnot, but the relationships made in grad school and then being able to lean on everybody I agree. I would not have survived some of my positions without being able to call people up. And so I think that is so that be there for each other, stay in touch with everybody you can that you went to school with, because you will lean on those people for so many things. I remember too, even I don't know if you remember this, Iris, but going back to even knowing like what a job, I think I was applying for an inpatient rehab in Boulder. And I was like, I had already put in the application. I told you what I told them I wanted hourly. And you were like, what? Like, nobody's going to pay you that. Well, of course, I did not get that, probably for that and other reasons. But it's like, I wish I would have had that conversation with you beforehand, because those are the kinds of things that it could have meant maybe been what didn't get me the job. But so I wish I would have talked to you beforehand. But I don't know what I would have done without having this group of friends that we made there to call and help or cry and also just, we're just a support system.
Yeah.
And nowadays with social media, I know, with Facebook, I'm on some of those group sites, and there is no shame in people asking all sorts of questions on there, for better, for worse. So I think, talk to your close friends, coworkers, and also turn to those resources. And also old professors. I guess that's something that I didn't do, is, communicate with my old professors or keep in touch with them. But I do know some of my coworkers who have. And so that's something to think about before you leave grad school as well.
Yeah, I didn't either.
That's a
And
good
sometimes I wish that I would have kept some of those relationships and be able to call them up and say, hey, what do you think? Or for guidance and, on certain topics. So that's a good point.
Yeah, because you never know when you're going to need those. And again, the therapy world is small. I feel like everybody knows everybody. And so be nice to everybody.
Yes.
Even if you don't feel that way in your heart. Because you never know when you're going to need to lean on somebody. Well, and that one thing I want to, I think, just end with that I think is so important that I wish I would have thought more about. And I see a lot of this on these groups too, Allison, on these Facebook groups, but it is so hard, but it's so true. It does not matter what anyone else is doing. You are on your own journey. So do not compare what you think you should be doing based on what someone else is doing. You're on your own journey, and just, I think keeping that in mind you'll have more joy if you do, than feeling like, oh, this person's doing that, I want to do, the grass is not always greener. So just stay the course for what works for you. All right. Great talk. I feel like my time with you all in grad school is, again, to also insult my family one more time. That was kind of the pinnacle of my life. I feel like it's all been downhill from there. So I'm so happy to still have these relationships and be able to have these ideas and chats with you all. And hopefully this helps somebody who's about to embark on this journey.
Yep. Good luck, everyone.
And that wraps up this episode. Thank you for tuning into SLP Full Disclosure. For more information about this episode, check out the show notes on our website at medtravelers.com/SLP Full Disclosure. And don't forget to leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss a guest. Are you interested in becoming a travel SLP? Visit medtravelers.com to learn more and explore the exciting opportunities we offer at top-level facilities across the country. Also, a special thanks to Jonathan Carey for producing this episode and Aiden Dykes for the music and editing. And as always, this episode was powered by Med Travelers. See you next time.